Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Beyond Behaviour podcast. I'm so glad you're here. And today I have TJ Walia joining us to talk a little bit about burnout. TJ Walia is a visionary entrepreneur, AI strategist, and leadership coach dedicated to transforming the way professionals and organizations work. As the founder of ZenTech and WorkPal, he helps businesses harness AI for productivity, leadership, and workforce management. With a background in Microsoft and a track record of training over 10,000 professionals, TJ specializes in AI integration, strategic branding, and high impact leadership coaching. Through his PWR AI framework, he empowers executives to build visibility, optimize decision making, and unlock career growth using AI. His corporate training programs, leadership workshops, and keynote focus on practical AI adoption, helping professionals 10 times their productivities while maintaining a work life balance. TJ is also the host of Tea Talks, a podcast featuring candid conversations with industry leaders on leadership, technology, and innovation. Whether guiding Fortune 500 executives, training teams on Microsoft Copilot, or helping professionals escape career stagnation, TJ's mission is clear: equip leaders with AI-driven strategies to elevate their impact. TJ, I'm so excited to have you here today. That was a mouthful. You have accomplished so much. Tell me a little bit about what you do.
Thank you, Ariela. I mean, it's first of all for I guess your listeners and the audience. We have a connection from a while back.
We do.
We should probably touch on as well. So I don't know if we're going to touch on that, but
Yes, I was going to touch on that. So yeah, let's start with that before. Okay, after that huge introduction, TJ and I go way back to high school. We were friends in high school. I have to say, I reached out to him on LinkedIn because I found him on LinkedIn and he looks the exact same. I'm like, TJ, you haven't changed in 30 years. It's crazy. So yeah, it's been about what, like 25 years, I guess, almost
yeah,
more.
it definitely has. It over the journey. I've stayed in touch with some people, and you come and go, and just how life is, and life gets in the way. And then when I saw your message pop up, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then we started having the conversation, and we took off right from where we left off back then,
Yeah.
right? So it was amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. And I mean, we connected before I started this podcast. And I remember, I mean, my husband was like sitting next to me. He's like, who's this TJ guy? I'm like, he's from high school. And my mom even remembers you. Right. Because I
Wow.
told her, I'm like, Mom, do you remember TJ? She's like, I think so. And so I showed her your picture. She's like, yeah, I remember him. So yeah, and I also have kept in touch with a few people from that group as well, just on, social media and stuff. And we have some people in common. And it's just really amazing. Like, I just love to see people from my past who have been able to just conquer. And by conquer, I don't mean like business success. I just mean, get to a point in their life where they are happy and doing what they want to do. And to me, that's always the goal, right? To me, it's you have a journey, and that's what we're going to talk about today. You have a journey, you have ups and downs, but then you ultimately want to get to a place where you're good and you're happy and you are happy with what you're doing. And so that's what we kind of talked about when we connected. And so when I started this podcast, even though it's a podcast about parenting and there is a parenting twist here, I knew I had to have you on this podcast because your message is very relevant, I think, to a lot of us out there. So now that we have reintroduced ourselves, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and kind of what led you to this point?
Yeah, absolutely. So, ever since I was in high school and before, my passion was tech. It was just where I wanted to be. Self-taught computer science. Dream was to work where either with Microsoft or IBM, one of these big tech companies in the day. Got my break at Microsoft, and it was just like the best thing ever. And you kind of fulfill that dream, and then you're like, okay, what's next? And you just go at it full speed. And that's what I went through. And, I was top of the game, doing really well. One of the youngest guys in a lot of the account bases that I was working with. And so that had its own challenges where people wouldn't trust you. And, how credible are you?
Yeah.
Given I was 26, 27 in a lot of cases, and I'm working with execs that are in, the 40s, 50s at the time. So there was always a battle of, showing up and proving, hey, that, I know what I'm doing, or I know what I'm talking about to a certain extent, and I've got the resources. But it was constantly a race to do more, do more, do more, show up better. And that at one point caught up to me. And I was not expecting it, didn't see it coming, to the point where We talk about burnout, and burnout is exhaustion, and we're tired, and we're just not motivated. I got to the point where I hit a wall. And I was at a client meeting in Richmond Hill at the Moxies, and I fainted right in front of my clients, in
Wow.
front of the entire restaurant. I was just pretty much at wit's end, and I did not see it coming. I thought it was just another day, another coffee. Let's keep on going, and we'll go home and catch up on sleep. But I was literally getting, I would say, anywhere from 4 to maybe 5 hours of sleep per night consistently, which was brutal. It was
Yeah.
brutal, right?
Yeah, so then that happened, and I'm guessing this was a pivotal moment for you. I don't know, but I would guess. How did you manage that, and what happened after that?
Yeah, I think before going managing into it and after, I think what we should talk about is probably duration or what happened during.
Yeah.
And it was probably the darkest time of my life. Did not see it coming. Like I said, I lost my entire confidence, my ability to speak to customers, clients, to the point where I'd be shaking. I couldn't drive. Like I would literally be shaking, and I didn't know what it was at the time. And it was like, okay, you know what? I'm going through something, and there's something definitely wrong. I can't even begin to tell you how many medical exams and tests I went through at that point just to see what's going on. But everything came out squeaky clean. My doctors kept on saying, "There's nothing wrong with you, TJ. There's nothing wrong." And I didn't realize this was actual anxiety or severe, extreme severe panic attacks that I was having that would cause me in the state. But that's, in hindsight, it's clear to see that. But at the time, doctors didn't know that's what was happening either, and they kept on going through the test. And I got to a point where I said, "You know what? This has to change." And it wasn't because I just decided, and this is it, and let's change. It was literally weeks and weeks, if not months, of me sitting in a dark room, didn't want to talk to anyone, didn't want to talk to my kids. I did not want to be around anyone, including my wife, my family, my brother, you name it. I did not want anyone around. And sadly, family didn't understand that.
Yes.
They thought it was just me. It's like, what's wrong with him? He's just, attitude, whatever, call it what you will, right? They just didn't understand what was going on psychologically behind the scenes. And that was a struggle for me as well, because one was I'm going through this and it's like, why doesn't anyone else understand what the heck I'm going through? And why can't they support me? The only person I would say that really was there, what was my wife. My kids were young. I had a 4-year old at the time, almost five, and a 1-year old. And, it got to the point where it was just like, I didn't want them to be around me even. Yet I changed my entire life for them because my first year my career my daughter was born, my first child, I didn't see her, so I packed up my bags and moved to a whole different city, worked from home, just so I can make sure that I can be spend all the time with my kids. And
Wow.
then, after this moment, all of a sudden, I don't want my kids around me. Again, the darkest time, and I remember this day so well, Ariella. My wife would just come into the room and just hand me my food and, give me a tray of food and that's it and leave, right? Like no conversation, no interact, nothing.
Wow.
That day, she looked at me and as she was walking away, I felt that she had given up. And it was just that one moment. I think it was what 3 months into the whole thing. And imagine that every day for
Wow.
the past
3
2 to 3 months.
months. Wow.
And I paused and I called her back. I said, I said, I need your help. And she's like, whatever we need. Right. I'm like, I don't want to be like this. I want to get out of this. And literally from that day to the next day, I was getting up at 5:30 in the morning. I didn't know what to do. I honestly, like, it's not like, I had a whole formula and a whole scripted thing. I've got to figure this out, but
Yeah.
I don't know what it is because doctors can't help me.
Yes.
Any video I've watched on YouTube can't help me. No one else is able to, connect with me at the same level. Not working. So I had to figure this out. And there used to be an app. I used to have an Android phone at the time, and it was like a 7-minute workout. I'm like, I don't care what it is. I'm just gonna go and do a workout for 7 minutes and get my headset, head in the right space, get going. And then there was a meditation app, and I started meditating. Even if it was a minute, I would put my
Yes.
headphones on. I would sit in a corner. I would just listen. This is at 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Fast forward a few weeks in, Ariella, even on a Saturday and a Sunday, I was at the gym at 6 a.m. and I just got up. No meds, the doctors that get on meds and this, and that. And I've been a problem solver my whole life. So it's like a med is going to suppress what the problem is. That's not what I want to do. I need to fix the problem. And so I got after it. So I'm not giving advice to anyone saying that, don't go on meds and stuff like that. Get the advice you need from your doctors and your professionals. But in my case, it was like, this is what I absolutely need and I
Yeah.
can get out of this.
You have to do what's right for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so getting out of that, I started getting better and better and better. I wasn't 100%, obviously. There were still, moments, but I knew I was much better. Returned back to work, right? I took some time off work at that point as well. And work was still overwhelming. But when I went back to Microsoft, one of my best bosses ever, he knew what was going on. A lot of people didn't understand at the time. And he's like, I know exactly what you're going through. Let me support you whichever way. Just knowing that he had my back
Yes.
was enough for me to say, okay, I can at least openly have a conversation and let him know this is how I'm feeling. And I'm still in touch with him to this day. Like that's how much, how incredible he was. And that journey is what really changed things up for me. And so when I got back to work, it's like everything I was doing at work wasn't working for me. It wasn't the right way. So I had to change things up. I watched every course and video on productivity you can imagine, and nothing helped. They were very general. They were very, do this and, here's this technique. And they're great in theory, but you need something practical that says, just show me how to do this. Again, nothing there. Rolled up my sleeves, figured out a whole new way of doing work at Microsoft. And it came in such a way that within 8 months, I got promoted.
Wow.
So I'm like, "Okay, this is interesting." But here's the kicker. That promotion came with me doing half the amount of work. I was only working 4 hours a day, and people wouldn't know this.
Wow.
But what had happened was I got so laser focused and so productive that I would knock out all the tasks, not waste time on, a YouTube video or reading through a blog or anything. It was laser focused. And so I kind of tried to stay off under the radar. I'm like, I don't want people to find out that, I'm only working this many hours. And,
Yes.
and I thought management was, not, on the right track, if more than anything else. But later, I started helping my peers out. Just I had extra time, so I'm like, let me go and help people out. There's emails coming in, and one of my friends comes up to me, my colleagues, and he goes, TJ, we barely have time to catch up on email. How the heck are you doing your own work? And on top of that, you're helping others. And so then I'm like, okay, you know what? Maybe others are struggling. So I started helping my peers with my strategy of what I did. I called it inbox zero. There were so many different other strategies, but I had my own flavor of it.
Yeah.
And I started helping them out and they started seeing the same kind of results. So then it went from, a batch of 5 to 10 to 40s. And I was literally outside of my core work. I was training 100 to 150 people every few months.
Wow.
Right. And then I remember 2021, Microsoft called and, and I'm still at Microsoft, but other departments and teams would call me globally. Like you'd have a team in Switzerland or Ireland saying, hey, we heard about your training. Can you come give to our team? And I had one group reach out and they're like, can you give this training to our group? And I would basically, because I had a full time job,
Yeah.
I would say, I only do 1 or 2 sessions a quarter. So, let's look at it next quarter because I'm at quota. They're like, no, we really need this. We're coming out of COVID. Everyone's, really burnt out. They're stressed. Can you really help out with this thing? I'm like, okay, sure. Let me make this one happen. And she says one thing to me. She goes, how many people do you typically have on your sessions? And I'm like, well, it ranges anywhere from 2 to 300. That's kind of where we're at. She goes, okay, I'm going to try to get you 500 just so it's worthwhile. And I'm like, okay, like to me, it's not the number. It's like, okay, let's see what happens. And the day we're having that session, it was April, and I remember I'll never forget that day. We jump on the bridge, and for whatever reason, there's already 400 people on the bridge. And I'm like, no one's ever early, not 5 minutes early, right? On a conference bridge, especially at
Yeah.
work. So
Yep.
I'm like, something's not okay. Maybe people are eager. This is interesting. I realized as soon as the time hit when the meeting was supposed to start, that number started rolling. And we went to 1,000, and then we're
Oh.
at 1,200, and then we're at 1,400. So I go to her, I'm like, behind the scene, I'm like, we're like a minute, not even a minute in, we're 30 seconds into the conversation and into the thing because everyone just jumped on. And I'm like, are we in the right call? Like, what's going on? She goes, I have no idea. She goes, I have no idea what's happening. We had 5,000 people join that call.
Holy cow. That's
And this was global at Microsoft, all internal. So I'm like, okay, there's a bigger problem here than, and that's not what I'm thinking at the moment. I'm thinking, yeah,
yes.
I'm having a mini panic attack. Like, what am I going to do? What do I have to share with all these people? And, uh, and it was just an incredible experience. It was just to see that this is the problem people have. So to answer your question, how did I get here? At that point, I decided, I said, if I ever leave Microsoft, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go and help enable people because this is a bigger problem. It's not going so that's essentially how I got here, but that was the journey and the
Yes.
kick in the pants and, and the life lessons that came along with it that brought me to coaching, teaching, and helping people find shortcuts in their careers.
That's incredible. And I think, that aha moment was like, and that is a true aha moment. You were like, holy cow, this is what I need to be doing. And I love that because, I follow you obviously on LinkedIn and Instagram, and you talk a lot about like your days at Microsoft and burnout. And you're very open with that, which I totally appreciate. Anyone that knows me knows that I'm very open with things like that. And I think it's great. And especially for a male to be open with that, because that doesn't happen as much as it should, right? Like we all go through stuff and it doesn't matter female, male, I don't care who you are, we're human.
We're
So
human.
for you to be open with that, like, and that's what kind of, intrigued me to really follow your story. And I think it's wonderful that you've kind of, you had this problem, you got to burnout, you really did. And you improved yourself. By improving yourself, you're able to help others. And I think it's beautiful what you're doing. And I love that you pivoted. Now are you still at Microsoft or you left
No,
Microsoft
I
altogether?
left Microsoft 2 years ago.
Wow. Okay. So you have left Microsoft and now you are doing this as a career and
This is it. Yeah.
this is it. This is amazing. And I know that you have been incredibly successful. You're always busy and talking in our podcast and all the things. And I celebrate every time I see you post about those things because, like I said, I love seeing people kind of conquer where they should be. So that's beautiful. And I love that you're helping people solve that problem. Now, I do want to pivot a little bit though. I do want to talk about, those days of burnout and that high anxiety that you had and, you're in your room for 3 months and you didn't want to see your kids. And for someone who hasn't experienced that, that probably sounds like, how can you do that as a parent? Like, how do you not want to see your kids? But I get it. Like I have anxiety and I manage it and I've been at that point where I'm just like, running red lights because I just don't notice them. Or, I just don't have space for my family because I'm so done. And I left a career of 15 years as well where I thought I was going to retire because I was burnt out. So I get it. And it doesn't sound weird or strange to me, but I do want to know kind of what that process was like for you and your family and how you were able to then repair that with your family. Because I think that gets overlooked a lot, right? Like we get through it, we find a solution, we become successful, we do the things, but there's still work to do in our own personal life. So if you're okay talking about some of those
Yeah,
things,
absolutely.
yeah, I'd love to hear that process. So, your wife obviously was a huge support, and I love that you said I need help. And I think, as soon as you said like the next day I was up at 5:30, I'm like, of course you were, because you spoke it. You said it out loud, you put it out into the universe, and you said it to, you know, the person that you trust the most in this whole world. So
Exactly.
tell me about that process and what that was like and how you were able to come back from that with your family.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you touched on, it's with your family.
Yes.
It wasn't, "Hey, let me figure this out
Yes.
while you guys do your thing." So there was a lot of deliberate conversations that we had. There was a lot of transparency that was there. So once I started understanding what was going on, because that was the first thing, without me understanding what's happening in myself, in my own body, it's hard for you to explain to anyone else what's going on. So the first thing I realized, and to the listeners here as well that have never experienced something like this, imagine an ongoing conversation in your head that is never ending about a topic, whether I'm not well, I'm going to faint again, this is going to happen, or that's going to happen, and you're trying to battle it and balance it every single moment. So to say that you're ignoring the family or you're kind of putting them, you're not really ignoring. You're so engulfed in this
Yes.
conversation that everything else is a secondary thought. It gets to the point where it activates certain senses in your body where you start feeling something's about to happen. So it just keeps multiplying and multiplying. So it's really suppressing that and fighting it. And I remember going back to, again, growing up, we watched Simpsons, right? And
Yes.
in Simpsons, there's a picture of Homer I've seen. I used to actually cut it out and had it everywhere on my backgrounds, on on in my car. I'd had a picture of it, and it was a reminder. And the picture was basically Homer telling his brain, saying, "Shut up, brain, or I'm going to stab you with a Q-tip." Right? And it was funny. It was cute. But it was enough to remind me that it's just the brain. There's nothing else going on. The brain is having a conversation. It's doing it what it's trying to do. Let it be. Right? And so that's part of where that overcoming of all this came out. And then for the family side, I got them involved. I told them, this is what I'm going through. This is where I need help. So there are going to be times that I'm going to need to disconnect. So whether that means, sleeping on the sofa, taking a nap, right, and recovering, and they know why dad is sleeping, or I'm in my room, or I'm gone for a drive on my own, right? All of that, there was transparency, not I'll tell you afterwards, or you don't need to know, or you don't. It wasn't any of that. It was always inclusive. It was always with their support. And to this day, I'm open about, any conversations I have, my business I run, the engagements I do, and this is why my kids are following my footsteps as well to a certain extent. My
I've seen
daughter,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
she's got her own podcast now.
Yeah.
She's doing speaking engagements, right? So there's a lot of that comes from that transparency and that communication. It's like, okay, let me figure some parts out, and then let me share what I've learned from it. And through that, I openly, share with my kids what anxiety is. How do we deal with it? There is that movie, I think it's Inside Out, I think it is.
Yes.
I don't know if you've seen that.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing.
We've seen both.
Amazing.
Yeah, we watch it
Right?
often.
And so one of the things that I learned to do, I've always been positive, for one,
Yes.
but the one of the things I learned to do is I learned to control my emotions. So when I look at, that movie, it kind of, rung true for me is that joy is that emotion that I want to overpower everything else. And when you do that, that's when you remain in a state of being positive, of being optimistic, and versus someone who has sadness or anger as their primary emotions, then that's the state they stay in, or that's the default that they go to. So for me, it was really deliberate of, okay, now I want to be happy. One of the things we did, and it may sound funny now, and we look at it and say, okay, it makes sense, but on my whiteboard, I used to write the word "be happy," and that's it. That was the top thing that would always stay there, and I would always tell my kids, "What are you gonna be when you grow up?" And they would start saying, "I wanna be a doctor, I wanna be" I'm like, "No, you wanna be happy. I don't care what you are, you want to be happy." Because there's doctors that are miserable, there's engineers that are miserable, there's scientists that are miserable, right? Yet there's doctors that are happy, there's doctors that, and scientists that are happy, and so on and so forth. So the ultimate goal is to be happy, irrespective of what you're doing, as long as it's respectful, credible, and so on and so forth. But it's about being happy and happiness. And so that's what I started focusing on. And that's what I brought into my life. And then from that, irrespective of what happens, there's gratitude, there's appreciation. And we have those conversations. I would say every single day, uh, appreciative of anything and everything that happens, whether I get a client, whether I lose a client, right? We're
Yep.
still appreciative of it because there's learnings out of it.
Yep.
And what did we learn out of it? What are the opportunities? That's the, I guess, the outlook that helped us get through it. But I say the word us because it wasn't just me on my own. If it was me on my own, I probably wouldn't have come out as strong as I have.
There's no way because, like, again, you need that village, right? And your village was your immediate family. I'm sure there were other people. And I think that's absolutely beautiful. You are teaching your children some really important life, excuse me, lessons. I'm very much the same way with my family. I'm very transparent as well. And I think, yeah, it's important to know, yeah, like dad needs a break right now. So he's having a nap on the couch. Like sometimes I'll just need a half an hour on my bed watching TV without anybody bothering me. And I tell the kids, I'm going to my room until X amount of time, do not enter. Like I just needed a break. And that's okay because you are teaching your children to A, advocate for themselves, be recognized, but also be mindful, right? It's all about mindfulness, that be happy on the board. That's all mindfulness. The wanting joy to overpower. That's all mindfulness. And that's mindfulness, empowerment, and all those things are kind of the in words, but really they're the kind of in because they work. And you just posted recently, I think it was today or yesterday, about, the people you surround yourself with. Something about like the people you surround yourself with heavily affect kind of what your trajectory is, right? Like whether you're happy or whatever. And I did comment, I truly do believe that. There have been many times, and I'm sure your life as well as mine, where we've surrounded ourselves with people who kind of brought us down, right? Who kind of helped us feel the burnout and helped us feel the anxiety because they were just not that positive. They didn't have that positive effect in our lives. And I think it's completely true. People you surround yourself with have a huge effect on the outcome. And so I think it's beautiful what you're doing. I think it's, and like you said, you overcame this with your family. I think that's the key. I grew up in a family where my parents and my dad was incredible. My mom is my favorite person, and I tell her all the time she's incredible. But they didn't have that transparency with us. I assume you're of the same generation where, they handled their things and we kind of handled our things, but I can't I can't bring my kids up that way because we're all human and I need to show them like, my daughter asks me all the time, "Mom, why are you hustling so much with like your podcast and your business?" And I said, "Because I'm going to be 45 in September, and this is what I want to do with my life. Like this is, at 40, whatever, I realize I want to help other parents and I want to help professionals and I want to help people who are neurodiverse thrive. And this is how I'm doing it. And I'm showing you that it's never too late. And just like you showed your family, it's never too late to kind of do what you know you're put on this earth to do and do it in
Absolutely.
a way that's true to you.
And I'll even add it's never too early either, right?
It's
I
never
I
too
I
early.
get a lot of criticism, and I shouldn't say a lot of criticism now, it's coming down a bit, but
Yeah.
my daughter started on LinkedIn when she was 11, right? And people are like, "Why don't you let her be a kid?" I'm like, "She is." Like, what assumptions are you making about her childhood because she's posting on LinkedIn,
Yes.
right? I'm building her that professional network. I'm building her that environment. I'm
100%.
teaching her all that, but that doesn't mean she doesn't go to karate, she doesn't go swimming, and she
Yep.
doesn't go play on the swings in the park. Like, she does all of that, but also does this. And she understands AI. She can code with it. She can develop. She can do all of that. How many kids can do that? My 11-year-old can do that.
Yep.
And I'm starting out my 5-year-old on the same journey as well. Why? Because I'm being intentional about what they can do. Their brains are in this state right now that they can absorb everything and
Yes.
anything. So why
Yes.
not give them stuff that's healthy for
And it's not just going to help them, with their eventual career. It's going to help them. Like there's so much of this in school right now, and it's just going to help them excel and succeed. And yeah, I mean, I've seen dabbles of your daughter's journey through your page, and I think it's amazing. And I see nothing wrong with that, right? She's clearly like she wants to do this. She wouldn't be if she didn't want to, and I think it's great. And I think like you said, you're teaching her those those things she needs to be successful in life, not even just in career, but you're also helping her pave that path. And you're right, it's absolutely never too early. And I think this generation is lucky because they get to explore that so much more than we ever did, right? Through technology and social media, the things that we never had when we were in high school, we were kids, which I think is part of why we kind of found what we want to do and have to do later in life. Where I think, if we can kind of eliminate that for our kids, and yes, it's a journey, and yes, you kind of learn from everything, of course. But if we can start teaching them younger, like I tell my kids all the time, I don't care what you do when you grow up. I'm just like you. I'm like, I care that you are happy. I care that you find people, whether it's friends, partners that are, that treat you well. I don't care what they look like, where they come from. I just want them to be good human beings.
exactly.
Right. And I mean, I think you and I know that about each other. Like we were very similar in high school, and I don't think much has changed there. But there's nothing wrong with kind of giving your kids those values as they're growing up, as well as the other skills and values they need to succeed in life. And part of that is, if you're going to teach your kids how to AI and code and all the things that I don't know how to do, they're just going to like create a lot more success for themselves. And good on that. And good on you for being open to that. And that's the other thing, right? Like people judge and people make assumptions. And I'm reading the Let Them Theory book right now, and I think it's amazing because it's so simple. It's like let them think what they want, but then there's the let me part of it. This is what I'm going to do, right? And I think it's so simple, but it's just so powerful to just be like, that's nice. You can say whatever you want to say about my kid. She's got a great life. She does all the kid things. And she also does these amazing things that are going to set her up for so much. Why not? And
Exactly.
if she can create something for herself as a young entrepreneur, why not extra?
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, going back to the post I created a couple days ago
Yes.
about your network, right? And
Yes.
it was, to your point, I think it was the video with the strawberries where one, strawberry touches a couple others and it will spoil them as well. The
Yes.
individuals that are giving this advice of don't make your kid do this, don't make your kid do it, they're lost in their own careers. Why would I be taking their advice? I've
Yes.
been laser focused on my career. I know what I want for my life. I'm happy with what I got. Why wouldn't I give them this rather than give them something that's going to make them miserable?
Absolutely. And
Right.
I think that's, again, like it's beautiful. I think you have come to a point in your life where you are like, here is a way of, decreasing all this other stuff that you don't need to deal with and creating success in a way that it's a lot more attainable. Why wouldn't you give that to your kids? I think it's beautiful. I mean, listen, I'm the first to say AI and tech and stuff is like way beyond. My husband is in cybersecurity and IT, and like I'm the opposite. Give me feelings, give me all the things. Give me neurodiversity, I'm your girl. But like AI and all those things, IG and LinkedIn, I'm still learning. So watching you do your thing, I'm like, it's incredible because you make it sound and feel and seem so effortless. And I'm sure not effortless, but you know what I mean? And I'm sure it is once you know what you're doing. And I think, I credit you and commend you for being able to build this beautiful thing, but I even more commend you for being able to recognize something's not good here for me as a human being, and I need to change that. I need to be intentional, and you know, I need to be meaningful about it, and that's kind of what brought me here today. So, you know, I really thank you for sharing that and for your vulnerability, and yeah, I thank you for coming on to this podcast. It was like a blast from the past for me for sure. And we still have to get that coffee that we talked about months ago.
Yes.
We definitely do. But yeah, I don't know if there's anything else that you want to share, or if you could even let our viewers know or listeners know how to reach you, how to find you. That would be great too.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple things. One, LinkedIn is where I live.
Yes.
Just do a search for TJ Walia, you'll find me. Um, it's the best way to find me, get the content, what I talk about is all there. One of the things I will share is that I actually wrote an ebook on it's called the Productivity Blueprint.
Okay.
Typically, I sell that to the audiences, but for your guests, I'll get you a link so that you can give it away to them for free as well, so that they can get access to this thing. So I'll give you that.
Thank you.
And that talks about my journey and some of the things that I did to get out of it. And if they're struggling with similar things, they can get some ideas out of it. The journey for each individual is different. Anyone dealing with anxiety, mental health, stresses of that nature, it's not the same for any two individuals. And people don't understand this. They think someone's facing anxiety, it's the same thing. Anxiety plays so many different roles and comes in so many different faces that you cannot even imagine. And a simple example of that I'll share is someone telling me that someone could have been abused as a child, and the person who was abusing that child could have been wearing something red without you even knowing, or a certain fragrance without you knowing. That color can trigger someone and they don't even know it. And it's subconscious. It happens in, again, very different aspects, very different ways. So if you hear of someone who's dealing with this, give them their space, right? Offer to help, but give them their space. And I'll go back. There's a podcast I'm going to be doing with an incredible woman. Her name is Jamie. She's out of Calgary, and she was in one of my accounts with me at Microsoft. And Ariela, I remember that day I couldn't cross the road. I froze because this has happened after everything that I've gone through. So for me, there's a million thoughts going in, and I just froze. And she looks at me and she says, "What's going on?" I'm like, "I don't know." Like I started shaking. I was very nervous. I'm like, I can't cross. She puts her hand on my shoulder and she goes, "TJ, this is anxiety. That's okay." She grabs my hand and helps me walk across the road. Like imagine that grown man,
That's beautiful.
right? Not able to walk.
Yes.
Most people would be like, "What's wrong with you? Let's go." She paused. She stopped, grabbed my hand, and then pulled me across and helped me walk across this road, right? And we're gonna be having this conversation on the podcast when I'm recording that with her as well. But it's anxiety is different for every single person. So understand that, respect that. Everyone has different tolerance levels, right? So I've been told, when I was going through my experiences, step up, be a man, right? And that actually is worse at that point for someone, because then you feel like you're failing.
Yep.
Then you feel like you're really at the bottom, right? And you're being reminded of that. So my message to the audience is just be more empathetic, understand, care, let people have their space, and and offer to help, and don't force it. If they need it, they'll approach you, but don't force it, because everyone has to get out of their battle in their own ways.
Absolutely, and you nailed it. Like it's trauma and anxiety, and it looks different for everyone. I recently had a trauma therapist on my podcast, and that's exactly what we talked about. Like it's so deep rooted, and things can trigger you. It looks different for everybody. Definitely offer support, but again, you need to take the person's lead. And what you just shared, again, thank you for sharing. I think it's beautiful. And again, step up and be a man. I That needs to change, right? Because you have very much stepped up in life, and you are very much, just because you're open about this does not make you less of a man, less of a human being. And that's, when you told me you were open to talking about your journey on the podcast, right away I was like, great, let's book a date because I have many women on my podcast. So very rarely do I have males on my podcast. You and my son have been the only males so far. I want to have more, but I think it's so, beautiful that you can be vulnerable and open and not, let it make you feel like less than because you're not less than. Like, and that's what society and the community needs to realize. Like,
Absolutely.
look at all that you've gone through and all the success you've had, but what it's done to you, the price you've paid, but for you to be able to get out of that and be like, yeah, this is what happened to me and it's okay. It's just beautiful. Yeah. And I again, I really, I love that you're here talking about it and I really appreciate it. And yeah, I think with that, we're going to wrap up. I don't think there's much to say. I will leave all of your contact info in the show notes as well as that link. Thank you so much for sharing that resource with our listeners. I'm going to be checking it out 100%. And yeah, that's it. And I know we'll be in touch and I know we'll chat again soon. And maybe, one day you'll come back and talk about more amazing things on this podcast. But yeah, I wish you luck and I thank you. And if you found this helpful at all, please share it with a friend. Please like our podcast and subscribe. And also, please do go and find TJ Walia on LinkedIn. He's incredible. You want to follow him and his story. Yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ariella. It
All
was a
right, have a
pleasure.
good one. Bye.